Nobody expected a simple dinner to turn into a full-blown confrontation that would leave an entire restaurant completely stunned. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening. Pam Bondi, dressed in a sharp navy blazer and heels, walked into Vincent's Bistro, an upscale restaurant in downtown Tampa. The place was well known among politicians, business elites, and high-profile attorneys, a spot where power players met over steak and wine. Pam had been here before. It wasn't the type of place where she expected trouble. But that night would be different. She had just wrapped up a long day of meetings and was looking forward to a quiet dinner with a few colleagues. Nothing political, just a meal, a drink, and a little time to relax. The restaurant was buzzing with energy. Waiters in black vests moved swiftly between tables, carrying trays of fine wine and filet mignon. Couples leaned in over candlelit tables, engaged in hushed conversation. A few glances were cast her way as she entered, but that wasn't unusual. People recognized Pam Bondi. Some admired her, others despised her. Pam followed the hostess toward her reserved table near the center of the restaurant. As she pulled out her chair, she caught a few whispers. She really has the nerve to show up here? Oh my God, that's Pam Bondi. I can't believe she's eating here like nothing happened. Pam ignored it. She was used to this. When you spent years fighting high-profile legal battles, defending conservative policies, and standing beside Trump, you didn't get to live life unnoticed. She and her colleagues, 2 men and 1 woman, settled in, glancing over their menus. And that's when it happened. From across the room, a tall, thin man with slicked-back dark hair and a crisp white apron emerged from behind the bar. His eyes locked onto Pam like a predator spotting prey. His name? Vincent Moreau, the owner of Vincent's Bistro, a man known for his elite connections, his progressive politics, and his disdain for anyone remotely conservative. He walked straight toward Pam's table, his posture rigid, his expression icy. Pam set her menu down, watching him approach. She could already tell this wasn't going to be pleasant. Vincent stopped beside her chair, standing a little too close, his arms crossed over his chest. Pam looked up at him, calm and unreadable. "Good evening," she said smoothly. There was no smile in return. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave," Vincent said, his voice clipped and direct. The conversation at the table immediately stopped. One of Pam's colleagues, a man in his early 40s, blinked in confusion. "Excuse me?" Vincent let out a short, humorless laugh. "I don't think I stuttered." Pam sat back slightly, studying him. "And why exactly are you asking me to leave?" she asked, her tone even, controlled. Vincent's lip curled. "Because I don't serve people like you," he said. The table fell silent. Pam's fingers lightly traced the edge of her napkin, her expression calm but razor-sharp. "People like me," she repeated slowly. "You'll have to be more specific." Vincent's smirk widened. "Trump loyalists," he said with a mocking tone. "Right-wing extremists, people who think they have the right to tell women what to do with their bodies." A few gasps came from nearby tables. Pam didn't blink. One of her colleagues, the woman at the table, shifted uncomfortably. "You can't do that," she said to Vincent. "This is discrimination." Vincent let out a mocking laugh. "Discrimination?" he scoffed. "Oh, I think Pam Bondi knows all about that, don't you, sweetheart?" Pam's jaw tightened slightly, but she didn't react. Vincent continued, now speaking louder, ensuring that everyone in the restaurant could hear. "You spent years defending a man who tried to destroy democracy," he said. "You spent years attacking women's rights, defending corrupt politicians, pushing policies that hurt people like my staff." Pam took a slow sip of water, then placed her glass back on the table with deliberate precision. Vincent took a step back, crossing his arms again. "So no, Pam," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're not welcome here, and neither are your friends." Pam let the words settle. The whispers at nearby tables grew louder. People were watching, some were amused, others were shocked. A few had even pulled out their phones, recording the exchange. Pam had spent her entire career dealing with high-pressure situations. She had been grilled by the media, smeared in headlines, and cross-examined in courtrooms. She could fight back, make a scene, demand her rights, or she could do something worse, something that would leave Vincent regretting this moment for the rest of his career. Pam stood up slowly, smoothing her blazer. She reached into her purse, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and placed it neatly on the table. She turned to Vincent, her expression unreadable. "For your time," she said, her voice eerily calm. Vincent frowned. "What?" Pam took a slow step forward, lowering her voice just enough that only he could hear. "I'll be seeing you again, Vincent," she murmured. "And when I do, I want you to remember this moment." Vincent's smirk faded instantly. Pam didn't wait for a response. She turned on her heel and walked out of the restaurant, her head held high. The whispers followed her all the way out the door. What nobody in that restaurant realized: Pam Bondi never lets things go. And Vincent Moreau had just made the biggest mistake of his career. Vincent Moreau didn't sleep much that night. The adrenaline that had fueled his smug self-satisfaction earlier in the evening had worn off, replaced by a gnawing unease. He had expected backlash. That was the whole point. He wanted to make a statement, to be celebrated by his circle for taking a stand against someone like Pam Bondi. But as he sat in his dimly lit office at the back of the restaurant, scrolling through his phone, he realized something. This wasn't going the way he had imagined. The video had gone viral, but the reactions weren't what he expected. He had assumed the internet would rally behind him, praise him for standing up to one of Trump's biggest offenders. Instead, the comments were brutal. "I don't even like Pam Bondi, but this is disgusting. Since when do we ban people from restaurants for their political beliefs? This dude just tanked his own business. Hope it was worth it." She handled this with total class. Meanwhile, this guy acted like a child. Imagine thinking you're the good guy while literally discriminating against someone. His stomach tightened. This was supposed to be his moment, the progressive hero standing up to a right-wing villain. Instead, he looked like the bad guy. His phone buzzed. It was his business partner, Mark. Vincent sighed and answered. "Yeah?" Mark's voice was ice cold. "What the hell did you do?" Vincent ran a hand through his hair. "Relax, it's just social media. People will forget about it in a few days." Mark's bitter laugh made Vincent's stomach drop. "Forget about it? Do you know how many reservations we lost today alone? Customers are canceling left and right. Our suppliers are reconsidering their contracts, and..." He stopped himself. Vincent sat up straighter. "And what?" Mark exhaled sharply. "And Pam Bondi just filed a civil rights complaint against you." The blood drained from Vincent's face. Mark kept going. "She's got some of the best attorneys in the country behind her. They're accusing you of political discrimination under Florida law. And guess what? They have a case." Vincent's mouth went dry. "This is ridiculous. I have the right to refuse service," Mark snapped. "You think that applies when you publicly humiliate someone for their political beliefs in front of a whole restaurant? You didn't just refuse service. You made it a damn spectacle." Vincent was silent. Mark's voice lowered, full of barely contained fury. "I don't care what your politics are, Vincent. You just put us in legal and financial hell because you couldn't keep your ego in check. And I swear, if this lawsuit bankrupts us, I will never forgive you." The line went dead. Vincent stared at his phone, his heart pounding. This wasn't supposed to happen. Pam Bondi sat at her desk, scrolling through her phone. She wasn't surprised by the video's traction. If anything, she had expected it. What did surprise her was just how quickly the tide had turned. She had been in politics long enough to know people loved a villain, and tonight, Vincent Moreau had made himself into one. Pam didn't need to play the victim. She didn't need to make speeches or call the media. The internet was doing the work for her. Her phone rang. It was Jack Sullivan, one of Florida's top attorneys and an old friend. "Pam," he said, his voice amused. "So I hear you've caused a bit of a storm." Pam smiled. "I didn't cause anything. Vincent did that all on his own." Jack chuckled. "True, but let's talk about how we're going to make sure he regrets it." 2 days later, Vincent's bistro was a ghost town. The usual crowd of business elites and city officials, gone. The restaurant, normally booked solid for weeks in advance, now had empty tables stretching from wall to wall. Vincent stood behind the bar, jaw clenched, staring at the reservation list. Three reservations for the entire night. His hostess, a young woman who had worked for him for 3 years, stood awkwardly by the front desk. "Should I, Tell the servers they can go home early? Vincent exhaled sharply and rubbed his temples. Yeah, let them go. She nodded and disappeared into the back. A few minutes later, the front door swung open. Vincent looked up, expecting to see another reporter or angry former customer. Instead, it was her, Pam Bondi. She was alone this time, dressed in an elegant white blazer, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Vincent stiffened. You've got to be kidding me. Pam stopped in front of the bar, resting her hands lightly on the counter. Vincent, she said, her tone almost amused. Vincent crossed his arms. If you're here to rub it in, save it. Pam smirked. Oh, I'm not here to rub it in. I'm here to give you a choice. Vincent's stomach twisted. What the hell are you talking about? Pam slid a piece of paper onto the bar. Vincent glanced down. His throat went dry. It was a legal notice. This, Pam said, tapping the paper lightly, is a formal lawsuit. You violated Florida's political discrimination laws, and I have every intention of seeing this case through. Vincent clenched his fists. You can't be serious. Pam's smile didn't waver. Dead serious. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping just enough that only he could hear. But I'm willing to make this go away. Vincent's head snapped up. What? Pam tilted her head. I don't need your money, Vincent. I don't want this place shut down, but I do want you to learn a lesson. Vincent swallowed. What do you want? Pam straightened. A public apology. On video. You admit that you discriminated against me. You acknowledge that what you did was wrong, and you promise it won't happen again. Vincent let out a bitter laugh. You want me to humiliate myself? Pam's expression turned icy. No, Vincent. You humiliated yourself when you pulled that stunt in front of your customers. I'm offering you a way out. Vincent looked down at the legal notice again. His business was already crumbling. If a lawsuit dragged on, he'd be finished. His jaw tightened. And if I don't? Pam's smile disappeared completely. Then I'll see you in court. She turned on her heel and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking against the floor. Vincent just stood there, his entire body frozen in place. Because for the first time since this whole mess started, he realized something. Pam Bondi had never been the victim in this story. She had been the one in control the whole time. And now, she had won. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire and challenge us to grow. What would you have done if you were in her shoes? Let us know in the comments below.